Frostbite, Chapter 1. I don't think my day could get any worse until my best friend told me she might be going crazy again. What did you say? I stood in the lobby of a dorm, leaning over on my boots and adjusting it, jerking my head up. I peered at her through the tangle of the dark hair covering half of my face. I had fallen asleep after school and had skipped using a hairbrush in order to make it out the door on time. Lisa's platinum blonde hair was smooth and perfect, of course, hanging over her shoulders like a bridal veil. As he watched me with amusement, I said that I think my pills might not be working as well as anymore. I straightened up and shook the hair out of my face. What does that mean? I asked around as Morai hurried past on their way to meet friends or to go to dinner. Have you started? Lowered my voice. Have you started getting your powers back? She shook her head, and I saw a small flash of regret in her eyes. No, I feel closer to the magic, but I still cannot use it. Mostly, what I'm noticing lately is a little of the other stuff. I'm getting more depressed now and then. Nothing even closer to what I used to be. She added hesitantly, seeing my face before she could go on her pulse. Lisa's moods could get so low that she cut herself. I'm just there a little more than it was. What about the other things you used to get? Anxiety? Delusional thinking? Lisa laughed, not taking any of this as serious as I was. You sound like you have been reading psychology textbooks. I actually have been reading them. I'm just worried about you. If you think the pills are not working anymore, we need to tell someone. No, 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 she said hastily. I'm fine, really. They are still working. Just not quite as much. I don't think we should panic yet. Especially you, not today, at least. Her change in the subject worked. I found out an hour ago that I could be taking my qualifier today. It was an exam, or rather, an interview. All non voice guardians were required to pass during junior year at St. Waldemarick's Academic. Since I had been off hiding Lisa last year, I could missed mine. Today I was being taken to a guardian somewhere off campus who could administrate the test to me. Thanks for the notice, guys. Don't worry about me, Lisa repeated, smiling. I will let you know if I get any worse. Okay, I said reluctantly, just to be safe though. I opened my sense and allowed myself to truly feel her through our psycho bond. She had been telling the truth. She was calm and happy this morning. Nothing to worry about, but the far back in her mind I sensed a knot of dark, uneasy feeling. It was not consuming her or anything, but it had the same feel as the bouts of depression and anger she used to get. It was only a trickle, but I don't like it. I don't want it there at all. I tried pushing further inside her to get a better feel for the emotions and suddenly had the weird experience of touching. A sickening sort of feeling seized me, and I jerked out of her head. A small shirt ran through my body. You okay? Lisa asked, frowning. You look nauseous all of a sudden. Just nervous for the test. I lied hesitantly. I reached out through the bond again. The darkness had completely disappeared. No trace. Maybe there was nothing wrong with her pills after all. I'm fine. She pointed at a clock. You won't be if you don't get moving soon. Damn it, I swore. She was right. I gave her a quick hug. See you later. Good luck, she called. I hurried off across the campus and found my mentor, Jimmy Bullock, waiting up beside a Honda Pilot. How boring. I supposed I could not have expected us to navigate Montana mountains round in a post, but it could have been nice to have something cooler. I know, I said, seeing his face. Sorry, I'm late. I remember then that I had one of the most important tests on my life coming up, and suddenly I forgot all about Lisa and her pills possibly not working. I wanted to protect her, but that could not mean much if I could not pass high school and actually become her guardian. Drummond stood there looking as gorgeous as ever. The massive brick building cast long shadows over us, looming like some great beast in the dusky prawn down light. Around us, snow was just beginning to fall. I watched the light Christian's flags drift gently down. Several landed and promptly melted in his dark hair. Who else is going? I asked. He shrugged. Just you and me. My mood promptly shoot up past cheerful and went straight to exhausted. Me and Rimmit alone in a car. This might very well be worth a surprise test. How far away it is? I begged for it to be really long drive, like one that could take a week and could involve us staying overnight in the luxury hotels. Maybe we could get stranded in the snow blank and only body heat could keep us alive. 5 hours. Oh, a bit a bit less than I hoped for. Still, 5 hours was better than nothing. It don't rule out the snow blank possibility either. The dim snow roads could have been difficultly for humans to navigate, but they proven no problem for our vampire eyes. I started ahead, trying not to think about how Drimit's aftershave filled the car with a clean, sharp scent that made me want to melt. Instead, I tried to focus on the qualifier again. It was not the kind of the thing you could study for. You either passed it or you don't. High up guardians visited non during their junior year and met individually to discuss students' commitment to being guardians. I don't know exactly what was asked, but rumors had trickled down over the years. The other guardians assessed characters and dedication, and some non voices have been deemed unfit to continue down the guardian path. Don't they usually come to the academic? I asked Jimit. I mean, I am all for the field trip, but why are we going to them? Actually, you're just going to a him, not a them. A light Russian ancient laced Drumit's voice, the only incident of where he could grown up. Otherwise, I was perfectly sure he spoke English better than I did. Since this is a special case and he is doing us the favor, we were the ones making the trip. Who is he? Author Kornberg. I jerked my gaze from the road to Drummond. What? I squeaked. Arthur Kornberg was a legend. He was one of the greatest recoil slayers in living Guardian history and used to be the head of the Guardians Council, the group of the people who assigned Guardians to the Morai or made decisions for all of us. He could eventually retired and gone back to be protecting one of the royal families, the Baracas. Even retired, I know he was still lethal. His exploits were part of my curriculum. Was not there anyone else available? I asked in a small voice. I could see Drimmels hiding a smile. You will be fine. Besides, if Art approves of you, that is a great recommendation to have on your record. Art Drimmel was on a first name basis with one of the most badass guardians around. Of course, Drimmel was pretty badass himself, so I should not have been surprised. Silence fell in the car. I bit my lip, suddenly wondering if I could be able to meet Arthur Scombeck's standards. My grades were good, but things like running away and getting into fights at school might cast a shadow on how serious I was about my future career. You'll be fine, Drummond repeated. The good is your record outweighs the bad. It was like he could read my mind sometimes. I smiled a little and dared to peek at him. It was a mistake, a long, lean body, obvious even while sitting, bottomless dark eyes, shoulder length brown hair, tied back to his neck. That hair felt like silk. I know because I could run my fingers through it when Victor Doshwak had ensured us with the last charm. With great resistance, I forced myself to start breathing again and look away. Thanks, coach, I teased, snuggling back into the seat. I'm here to help, he replied. His voice was light and relaxed. rare for him. He was usually wound up tight, ready for any attack. Probably he figured he was safe inside a Honda, or at least as safe as he could be around me. I was not the only one who could had trouble ignoring the romantic tension between us. You know what you could really help? I asked, not meeting his eyes. Hmm? If you turned off his crap music and put on something that came out of the Berlin Wall went down. Drummond laughed. Your worst class in history, yet somehow you know everything about Eastern Europe. Hey, got have material of my jokes, Commander. Still smiling, he turned the radio dial to a country station. Hey, this is not what I had in mind, I exclaimed. I could tell he was on the verge of laughing again. Pick, it is one or the other. I signed. Go back to the 1980s stuff. He flipped the dial and I crossed my arms over my chest as some vague European sounding band sang about the how video had killed the radio stat. I wish someone could kill this radio. Suddenly, 5 hours don't seem as short as I thought. Arthur and the family he protected lived in a small town along 190, not far from the building. The general moral opinions was split on the place to live. Some argued that big cities were the best since they allowed vampires to be lost in the crowds. Non-cultural activities don't raise so many attention. Other Morai, like this family, apparently opted for less populated towns, believing that if there were fewer people to notice you, then you are less likely to be noticed. I could convince Jimmy to stop for food at a 24-hour dinner along the way, and between that and stopping to buy gas. It was round noon when we arrived. The house was built in a rambler style, all one level with grey strained wood siding and a big bay windows turned to the block sunlight, of course. It looked new and expensive, and even out in the middle of nowhere, it was about what I could have expected for a members of a royal family. I jumped down from the pilot, my boots sinking through an inch of smooth snow and crunching on the gravel of the driveway. The day was still and silent, save for the occasional breath of wind. Drummond and I walked up to the house, following a river rock sidewalk that cut through the front yard. I could see him sliding into his business mood, but his overall attitude was as cheery as mine. We could both take a kind of guilty satisfaction in the pleasant car ride. My foot slipped onto the two on the ice-covered sidewalk, and Drummond instantly reached out to steady me. I had a weird moment of rujua, flashing back into the first night we could met, back when he could also saved me from the similar fall, freezing temperature or not. His hand felt warm on my arm, even though the layers of the down in my parka coat. You okay? He released his hold to my dismay. Yeah, I said, casting accusation eyes at the ice sidewalk. Have not these peoples ever heard of salt? I meant it jokingly, but Drummond suddenly stopped walking. I instantly came to a halt too. His expression became tense and alert. He turned his head, eyes searching the broad, white plains surrounding us before sitting back of the house. I wanted to ask question, but something in his posture told me to stay silent. He studied the building for almost a full minute, looked down at the ice sidewalk, then glanced back at the driveway covered in a sheet of snow broken only by our footprints. Casually, he approached the front door and I followed. He stopped again, this time to study the door. It was not open, but it was not entirely shut either. It looked like it had been closed in haste, not sealing, further examination showed scuffs along the door edges as though it had been forced at some point. The slightest nudge could open it. Drummond lightly ran his fingers along where the door met his frame, his breath making small clouds in the air. When he touched the door handle, it jiggled a little, like it had been broken. Finally, he said quietly, Rose, go wait in the car. But what? Go. One word, but one filled with power. In that single syllable, I was reminded of the man I could see throw people around and stack a streak. I backed up. walking on the snow-covered lawn rather than the risk of the sidewalk. Grimmett stood where he was, not moving until I could slip back into the car, closing the door as soft as possible. Then, with a gentleness of movements, he pushed on the badly held door and disappeared inside. Burning with curiosity, I counted to 10 and then climbed out of the car. I know better than to go in after him, but I had to know what was going on with this house. The neglected sidewalk and driveway indicated that no one had been home for a couple of days, although it could also mean the Barricas simply never left the house. It was possible, I suppose, that they could be the victims of any ordinary break in by humans. It was also possible that something had scared them off. Say, like Strigoi, I know that possibility was what had made Grimmit's face turn so grim, but it seems an unlikely scenario with authors combat on duty. Standing on the driveway, I glanced up at the sky. The light was bleak and watery, but it was there, noon, the sun's highest point today. Strigoi could not be out in the sunlight. I don't need to fear them, only Grimmit's anger. I circled around the night side of the house, walking in the much deeper snow, almost a foot of it. Nothing else weird about the house struck me. Icicles hung from the waves, and the tinted windows relieved no secrets. My foot suddenly hit something, and I looked down. There, half buried in the snow, was a silver streak. It had been driven into the ground. I picked it up and brushed off the snow, frowning. What was the streak doing out here? Silver streaks are valuable. They were guardians, almost deadly weapon, capable of killing a streakoid with a single stride through the heart. When there was a forged, four more I charmed them with magic from each of the four elements. I had not learned to use one yet, but gripping it in my hand, I suddenly felt safer as I continued my survey. A latch, patio door, lead from the back of the house to a wooden deck that probably could have been a lot of fun to hang out on in the summer, but the glasses had been broken so much so that a person could easily get through the jagged hole. I crept up the deck steps carefully of the ice, knowing I was going to get in the major trouble with Trimmett found out what I was doing. In spite of the cold, sweat poured down my neck. Daylight, daylight, I remembered myself. Nothing to worry about. I reached the piano and studied the dark glass. I could not tell what had broken in. Just inside, snow had blown in and made a small drift on the pale blue carpet. I tugged on the door's handle, but it was locked. Not that the mattered with a hold that thing. Careful on the sharp edges, I reached through the opening and unlocked the handle's latch. From the inside, I removed my hand just as careful as pulled open the sliding door. It hissed slightly along its tracks, a quiet sound that nonetheless seemed too loud in the airy silence. I slipped through the doorway, standing in the patch of the sunlight that had been cast inside by opening the door. My eyes adjusted from the sun to the dimness within. Wind swirled through the open piano, dancing with the curtains around me. I was in a living room. It had all the ordinary items one might expect: couches, TV, a rocking chair, and a body. It was a woman. She lay on her back in front of the TV, her dark hair spilling on the floor around her. Her wide eyes stared upward blankly, her face pale, too pale even for a morrow. For a moment, I thought her long hair was covering her neck too, until I realized that the darkness across her skin was blood, dried blood. Her throat had been ripped out. The horrible scene was so squirrel, I don't even realize what I was seeing at first. With her posture, the woman might very well have been sleeping. Then I took in the other body, a man on his side, only a couple feet away. Dark blood stained the carpet around him. Another body was slumped beside the couch, small, child size. Across the room was another and another. There were bodies everywhere, bodies and blood. The scale of the death around me suddenly registered, and my heart began pounding. No, no, it was not possible. It was day. Bad thing could not happen in daylight. A scream started to rise in my throat, suddenly halted when a gloved hand came from behind me and closed over my mouth. I started to struggle, then I smelled Drummond's aftershave. Why? He asked. Don't you ever listen? You have been dead if they were still here. I could not answer, both because of the hand and my own shock. I could seen someone die once, but I could never seen death of this magnitude. After almost a minute, Drummond finally removed his hand, but he studied closer behind me. I don't want to look anymore, but I seemed unable to drag my eyes away from the scene before me. Bodies everywhere, blood and body. Finally, I turned towards him. It's daytime, I whispered. Bad things don't happen in the daytime. I heard the depression in my voice, a little girl's plea that someone could say this is all a bad dream. Bad thing can happen any time, he told me, and this don't happen during the day. This probably happened a couple of nights ago. I dared a peek back at the bodies and felt my stomach twist. 2 days to be dead, to have no existence snuffed out, without anyone in the world even knowing you were gone. My eyes fell on a man's body near the room's entrance to a hallway. He was tall, too well built to be a Morai. Drummond must have noticed where I looked. Arthur Snowberg, he said. I started at the Arthur's bloody throat. He is dead, I said, as though it was not perfectly obvious. How can he be dead? How could a Strigoi kill Arthur's cornbacks? It don't seem possible. You could not kill a legend. Drummond don't answer. Instead, his hands moved down and closed around where my own hand held the stake. I flinched. Where did you get this? He asked. I loosened my grip and let him take the stake. Outside, the ground. He held up the stake, studying its surface as it shone in the sunlight. It broke the ward. My mind, still stunned, took a moment to process what he said. Then I got it. Vats were magic rings cast by Morai. Like the stacks, they were made using magic from all of the elements. They required strong Morai magic users, often a couple for each element. The Vats could block Strigoi because magic was charged with life, and the Strigoi had none. But Vats faded quickly and took a lot of maintenance. Most Morai don't use them, but certain places kept them up. Strain Valdemic's academic was ringed with several. There had been a ward here, but it had been shattered when someone drove the stake through it. Their magic conflicted with each other. The stake had won. Strigoi cannot touch stakes, I told him. I realized I was using a lot of cannot and don't statements. It was not easy having your core beliefs challenged. And no Morai or Dampier could do it. A human might. I met his eyes. Humans don't help Strigoi. I stopped. There it was again. Don't. But I could not help it. The one thing we could count on in the fight against Strigoi was their limitations: sunlight, ward, stack, magic, etc. We used their weakness against them. If they had others, humans, who could help them and were not affected by those limitations. Drummond's face was torn, still ready for anything, but the tiniest spark of sympathy flashed in his dark eyes as he watched me wage my mental battle. This changes everything, does not it? I asked. Yeah, he said. It does.